new light was shined down on Adnan's murder case. Review on the podcast Serial Season 1, Episode 1, The Alibi. Events on a given day are hard to recap. I know I even struggled to remember what I ate for dinner last night, or if I even ate at all. Was it a late lunch? Issues like this arise all the time. Having this given as a first statement in the podcast posed a concern in my mind. How could one recall events that happened a day ago perfectly, let alone 6 weeks? How can one be proven innocent or guilty when remembering events is so hard? Adnan, the boy in this trial, was found guilty of first-degree murder and went to a high-facility lockup center. Sarah Koenig from the Serial podcast decided to reopen this case. Adnan's family must have had many mixed emotions from this. I personally believe they may have felt relieved that someone else is looking into this case with a different perspective, trying to prove his innocence and all the flaws within the trial. Or his family could have felt guilty and mad that it's being brought up now because things have turned on his family in some parts of this podcast. This podcast was remarkable in showing so many different perspectives on the murder case. Was Adnan really guilty or was he innocent? Did the stories line up with the witnesses? Listening to this podcast gave me so many opinions on what really happened and how long it must have taken to form this podcast. Personally, I like listening to this podcast about the murder case rather than having to read about it. Issues with this is I'd get distracted to go on my phone, but with listening, I got to hear how the story played out, as if I was watching a movie and drawing my own pictures. Listening to the different voices rather than having to read it in my own head, making up voices, was remarkable. Reading becomes dense after too long and absolutely boring. The only good thing about reading in this case would have been I have quotes directly in front of me. While reviewing this investigation through a podcast, I realized that it's more cohesive and readers can relate more to it. If I had to read this investigation in a paper form, I definitely would have been so invested in the story and what happens next. Investigation journalism shows young readers like myself and young listeners in this case to want to be involved and to want to know what happens next. This format should definitely be used more.